He's closer than he's ever been, not to your door, but to your truth. This is the moment the universe stops grading his words and starts weighing his consistency. No more grand gestures, no more chase. The final test is simple and ruthless. Can he stand inside your boundary without trying to move it? Can he repair what he broke without asking you to carry the repair? Can he choose alignment over adrenaline again and again and again? Your silence is not distance now, it's calibration. Your yes isn't for sale, your no isn't a threat. And in this atmosphere, performance dies fast. Only presence breathes. He will feel the difference. Apology won't be enough. Proving won't be needed. The field will ask for something quieter and heavier: accountability. This is where boys lose interest and men arrive. Where flowers mean nothing and follow through means everything. Where I want you becomes I will hold you without making you smaller. You don't have to test him. Life will. Your boundary is the curriculum. Your peace is the proctor. So ask yourself, gently, if he came with no fireworks, only truth, would you feel safer? If he slowed down instead of speeding up, would your body exhale? Because before the feminine accepts the union, the masculine must pass the only exam that matters: stability in the presence of real love. If he's ready, you'll know, not by butterflies, but by ground. Not by promises, but by pattern. Not by pursuit, but by presence. Stay anchored. Let the field do its work. When he can meet you where you are, without bending what you are, the door won't just open. It will stay open. It doesn't look like fireworks. It looks like a pause that doesn't collapse. The final test isn't about whether he can get to you. It's about whether he can stay with himself while he's next to you. The universe stops grading his declarations and starts weighing his nervous system. Can he remain present when your boundary doesn't move? Can he keep his chest open when your answer isn't immediate? Can he hold the repair without handing you the tools and the timeline? This is the threshold where performance runs out of air. The chase that used to feel exciting now rings hollow. Grand words feel light in the hand. Follow through carries weight. He learns that apology is not the medicine. Accountability is. Accountability is quiet. It doesn't beg for praise. It fixes what it can fix, changes what it can change, and keeps changing even when nobody is watching. The field will not tempt him with instant relief. It will offer him repetition. The same boundary met calmly more than once. The same truth spoken cleanly on ordinary days. The same pace even when adrenaline says speed up. He discovers that love isn't a sprint to the door, it's the breath he keeps after you open it. And your silence, so often misread as distance, becomes calibration. You're not withholding, you're listening for pattern. He is learning that your body trusts rhythm, not rhetoric. Old reflexes will try to return. He will feel the itch to prove, to promise, to buy time with intensity. That's when the test sharpens. Can he notice the impulse and choose alignment instead? Can he resist dragging you back into explaining your needs and simply meet them? Can he feel his fear without making it your job to soothe him back into courage? He will be asked to repair the places he left frayed, not by rewriting history, but by tending to the present he once abandoned, returning calls he would have dodged, closing doors he left half open, naming the impact without defending his intentions. You won't need a speech to recognize it. Your shoulders will drop before your mind forms a thought. Stability announces itself as ground. The universe is not cruel here. It is precise. It knows that the feminine cannot accept what she must also carry. It will watch how he behaves when your no is loving and final. It will measure whether he can come closer without making you smaller. It will notice if he keeps pace with your truth on the days when no one is applauding. It will check if he can disagree without disappearing and desire without demanding. You don't have to orchestrate any of this. Life will bring the moments. A plan that changes last minute, a feeling that rises unexpectedly, a conversation that calls for honesty over harmony. Each moment asks him the same question in a different voice. Will you choose regulation or reaction, responsibility or romance, staying or sprinting? And each time he chooses staying, the field gets heavier in the best way. Less static, more signal, less spark, more ember. If you're wondering how you'll know it's real, notice what your body does. Butterflies were the old curriculum. In the final test, truth feels like breath you didn't know you were holding, finally leaving your chest. You stop rehearsing responses on the way to meet him. You stop bracing for the turn. The room gets simple. Presence fits. This is the moment you become invitation, not instruction. You are not here to teach him how to pass. You are here to be exactly as you are when love is safe to stay. If he is ready, he will find you without moving your line. If he isn't, your line will protect you from calling a rehearsal the show. The threshold is plain and holy. No stage, just a door. He arrives with truth that can stand, not kneel. You receive without shrinking, not because you're hard, but because you are finally whole. And in that quiet clarity, the universe does what it came to do. It lets what is aligned remain, and it lets what is not gently fall away. Remorse is a feeling. Responsibility is a practice. Remorse arrives loud. Apology, intensity, a rush to say everything he didn't say. Responsibility arrives steady, small, repeatable choices that change the atmosphere. Remorse wants relief. Responsibility wants repair. In the masculine's final test, the universe is not moved by how sorry he is. It's moved by what he does when no one is rewarding him for it. He learns that apology is a doorway, not a destination. I'm sorry without adjustment is nostalgia in costume. Responsibility asks different questions. What broke? What will it take to restore safety? Can I do that consistently, even when I feel clumsy, even when praise doesn't come? This is where the ego loses its favorite tool, performance, and something older and truer begins to build. Repair begins in his body. He notices the impulse to speed up when you stay grounded, the urge to convince when you remain clear. Instead of selling you certainty, he regulates himself. He slows his breath, softens his chest, lets your boundary be information rather than injury. He doesn't chase your yes, he earns your ease. You feel it before you believe it. Your shoulders drop, your jaw loosens, the room feels simple again. That's not romance. That's responsibility stabilizing the field. Repair looks practical. He closes the loops he left open. He stops leaving you with questions he could answer. He shows up when he says he will. And when life changes the plan, he names it instead of disappearing. He doesn't ask you to read between the lines. He writes the line and stands in it. Transparency, not theater. Rhythm, not rescue. Repair is also relational. He holds space for impact without turning it into a trial about intention. He lets your experience be true without demanding a counter-argument. He can hear how his silence landed without defending why it happened. He doesn't make your pain the proof that he's terrible or you're too much. He uses it as a mirror to see where he must grow. Can he stay present when your truth is inconvenient? Can he choose alignment over image when no one else is watching? Responsibility requires him to change the structures that made avoidance easy. He simplifies what is tangled, clears third-party entanglements, stops feeding dynamics that kept him distracted, not as a performance to win you back, but as a hygiene that would exist even if you weren't looking. You recognize it by its lack of spectacle. It's quieter than remorse and heavier than promises. He also stops outsourcing regulation to you. The old pattern wanted you to soothe his fear and name his next step. Now he takes direction from his own soul and brings you the fruit of that work, not the assignment. He doesn't ask you to mother what he can mend. He isn't looking for a shortcut through your softness. He is building stamina inside his own chest, so closeness doesn't collapse him. Time becomes his ally. He accepts your pace without punishing it. He doesn't push for quick declarations to erase the past. He builds days that don't repeat it. He understands that trust is not a verdict, it's a climate. He contributes to that climate by choosing the unglamorous virtues, consistency, clarity, consideration, over the dopamine of grand gesture. You feel less lightning and more hearth, less spike, more stay. Responsibility protects your boundary instead of negotiating with it. He doesn't ask you to lower the line so he can pass. He raises himself to meet it. Your no remains loving and final, and somehow it brings him closer rather than driving him away, because he now sees it as the architecture of safety, not an obstacle to closeness. He discovers that intimacy without integrity is just velocity, and he is done mistaking speed for depth. Repair also means owning the full arc of his choices. He stops calling harm a misunderstanding. He names patterns by their names: avoidance, minimization, control, and chooses differently in real time. When a trigger appears, he pauses rather than projects. When shame flares, he breathes rather than performs. When desire rises, he asks, "Can my truth hold her truth?" Instead of, "How do I get what I want?" This is the subtle alchemy that turns a boy who apologizes into a man who can be trusted. And you don't have to grade him, your body will. If responsibility is present, you won't feel rushed to forgive. You'll feel free to relax. Conversation gets shorter and cleaner. You stop rehearsing before you meet. Silence feels like weather, not punishment. The connection stops asking you to abandon yourself to keep it. That's the metric. Remorse seeks a moment. Responsibility builds a pattern. Remorse hopes for a reset. Responsibility creates a reality where the old wound can't survive. In the final test, the universe isn't waiting for him to cry the perfect tear. It's waiting to see if he can keep choosing truth when the spotlight moves away. When he does, the field thickens in that holy way. Less sparkler, more candle. That's when the feminine's body knows. Not only can he reach the door, he can live on the other side. It won't announce itself with a drum roll. The first sign is subtle. Space opens where pressure used to live. He doesn't crowd the moment to get an answer. He lets truth take a full breath. When your boundary stands, he doesn't argue with it or try to charm it smaller. He adjusts himself to the size of reality. The pace shifts from rush to rhythm. He isn't trying to win you back in a weekend. He is becoming someone who can stay on a Tuesday. You'll feel it before you name it. Your body stops bracing for the turn. There's less static in the room, fewer spikes in your chest, more ground under your feet. He doesn't perform remorse to get a pass. He holds responsibility long enough for trust to warm up. Silence is no longer a lever. It's weather that moves through without being weaponized. He answers questions without making you work for clarity. And when he doesn't know, he says so and circles back instead of disappearing. Old tactics lose their shine. Triangulation dies. He stops inviting third parties into a two-person field, whether that's people, distractions, or crises. The soft manipulation fades. No timed withdrawals to provoke chase. No breadcrumbing to keep a door half open. He no longer treats your intuition as a threat. He meets it with his own. He doesn't ask you to explain the connection as proof. He shows up as evidence. A different courage appears. He can sit in the heat of impact without turning it into a trial about intention. He can disagree without exile. He can desire without entitlement. He doesn't ask you to carry his trigger back to calm. He walks himself there and arrives steadier. Accountability becomes his native language. Simple, specific, repairable. The apology gets shorter and the change gets longer. You will notice how ordinary it looks. Fewer speeches, more follows through. Fewer highs, more hearth. He tells the same truth on boring days, not just inspired ones. He plans in a way that leaves you more free, not less. He closes the loops he used to leave open. Conversations, commitments, previous entanglements. And he does it without parading progress for points. The field thickens in that quiet way, the one that makes rooms feel simpler than they used to. This is the part where your clarity matters as much as his growth. It is not your job to translate his awakening into steps. It is not your job to mother his nervous system back to regulation, to soften your boundary so he can feel successful, or to keep the momentum from stalling. You are not the tutor, the timeline, or the safety net for the old pattern. If you rush to narrate the meaning of every improvement, the ego will try to turn your generosity into a strategy. Let the evidence stand on its own legs. It is not your job to make repairs convenient. If your body needs time, that need is not an obstacle. It's architecture. You are not required to offer access as a reward for effort. You are not required to dim your knowing to protect his image of himself. You are not required to carry hope on both backs. Your work is different now. Remain exactly as true as you were when the chase ended, because that truth is the condition under which real union can live. You'll know his ego is dying when the conversation stops orbiting his comfort. He starts asking better questions, the kind that build a future instead of borrowing one. What would make this feel safe for you? How can I show up in a way that doesn't cost you yourself? And then he answers those questions with behavior, not a brand new paragraph. He respects your still no without sulking, your not yet without pressure, your yes without sprinting past it. Notice your own tells. When the old cycle tries to resurrect, your chest tightens and the room gets complicated. When the new pattern roots, you exhale without effort. You feel more available to your day after you speak with him, not less. You stop rehearsing and start arriving. That's the metric. Not butterflies, breath. Not fantasy, function. If backslides happen, and they do in any real transformation, watch what he does next. Death rattles of the ego are loud. Dying is different from dead. Does he catch himself quicker? Does he repair without making you hunt him? Does he choose alignment over adrenaline on the second try? Progress is repetition with less rupture. You don't need perfection, you need evidence that he can keep choosing truth once the spotlight moves. Let the field finish the lesson. You don't have to nudge, remind, or rescue the pace. Meet sincerity with presence and performance with pause. Keep your boundary loving and final. The masculine's final test is not about earning you. It's about becoming someone who will not lose you by losing himself. When that happens, the room goes quiet in the best way. The door you've been guarding doesn't just open. It feels like it could finally stay that way. Union doesn't ask you to go soft on your truth. It asks him to come soft to it. The boundary is not a wall. It's the doorway that keeps the room sacred. In the masculine's final test, the meeting point is simple. Can he come close without asking you to become smaller? And can you stay open without losing shape? Closeness begins in how the moment is held. He arrives with steadiness, not strategy. He doesn't lean on urgency to buy intimacy. He lets time be spacious enough for both nervous systems to exhale. Your body recognizes this before your mind approves it. The jaw unhooks, the shoulders drop, the breath widens. You aren't bracing for the turn. He isn't performing for a pass. Presence replaces persuasion. The boundary speaks first. Sometimes it's a sentence. Sometimes it's the pace. Sometimes it's simply the way you stay regulated when old patterns try to reenact themselves. He hears it as information, not indictment. If your no is loving and final, he doesn't circle it with argument. He calibrates to it. If your yes is honest but small, he doesn't stretch it to fit his fantasy. He meets it where it lives. This is where closeness grows roots, inside proportions that tell the truth. Repair lives here too. He doesn't ask you to reopen what hasn't healed. He tends the present he once abandoned. He follows through on small agreements because small agreements teach the body it can rest. He tells you where he is instead of making you ask. When life changes the plan, he names the change and stays in connection rather than disappearing into explanation. The story gets quieter because the behavior carries it. Your work is different now. You are not responsible for keeping the moment from breaking. You are responsible for keeping yourself from breaking inside the moment. Stay with your breath long enough to hear your real answer. Speak it without embroidery. If closeness pulls you towards speed, slow your hands and let your eyes do the welcoming. If fear tries to disguise itself as be generous, ask your body whether generosity would cost you yourself. Can you stay warm without going fluid? Can you stay clear without going cold? Touch becomes language again, not as proof, but as prayer. He learns to touch in ways that leave more of you present, not less. You learn to receive in ways that do not mortgage tomorrow for tonight. The field records this. The next meeting is easier because the last one didn't require either of you to abandon who you are. Intimacy stops being a cliff you jump from and becomes a shoreline you can return to. Conflict won't vanish. It will change altitude. When tension rises, he doesn't weaponize silence. He names what is happening in him without demanding that you carry it. He can disagree without punishing, desire without pressure, pause without retreat. You can hold your line without turning it into a lecture. The conversation moves like water around a rock. Contact, sound, passage, until the current finds its shape again. You leave more connected than when you began, not because nothing hurt, but because truth stayed in the room. Backslides will try to visit. Old adrenaline will whisper for quick declarations, for fast intimacy to erase old delay. This is where your boundary protects both of you. You do not trade clarity for closeness. He does not trade accountability for access. The pace you keep is not a punishment. It's the climate in which love can live. If the step is real, it will still be real tomorrow. Notice the signatures of alignment. You don't need to rehearse on the way to see him. You don't need to recover after you leave. Your day remains available to you. He looks steadier in his own life, even when you are not together. The field between you loses drama and gains weight. This is what staying feels like. If a wobble appears, respond with atmosphere, not analysis. Soften the breath. Let your no be clean and your yes be slow. Let the room remember what safety feels like. He will either rise to meet it or reveal that the test is still testing him. Either way, your boundary keeps you whole, and a whole woman is the only one who can accept true union. Closeness without collapse is not a trick. It's a practice. It's two people choosing regulation over reaction, repair over rush, proportion over spectacle. It's the end of auditioning and the beginning of dwelling. When you meet here, at the exact edge where you remain yourself and he remains responsible, the door doesn't just open. It becomes a threshold you can cross again and again, with the same truth that brought you to it. What the universe requires before she says yes, before the door becomes a home, the universe asks for something quieter than declarations and heavier than longing. It asks for coherence, not the sparkle of pursuit, but the steadiness of a man who can hold what he asks to receive. This is the final check, not of chemistry, but of capacity. Capacity shows in ordinary light. He doesn't need a perfect line. He needs a regulated chest when your boundary stands. He doesn't need to promise forever. He needs to keep today clean. He doesn't need to outrun his past. He needs to close it with dignity so it cannot leak into your future. The field pays attention to what he does when the room isn't romantic. How he tells the truth on a Tuesday. How he owns impact without asking you to minimize it. How he slows himself instead of speeding you. The universe is protective of the feminine who did the work. It will not allow her to say yes to what she must also carry. So it listens for evidence that his stability is self-sourced. Can he meet uncertainty without manufacturing drama? Can he want you without weaponizing urgency? Can he bring clarity without making your body do the labor of decoding him? When the answer is yes, the atmosphere changes. The space around you grows simple. You feel safer by how little you have to manage. It also requires reverence for proportion. Your no remains loving and final. Your yes is honest, even when small. He treats both as directions, not obstacles. He learns that your pace is not punishment. It's the climate where love lives. The universe notices when he matches that climate, how he tends to present reality rather than negotiating it, how he lets your boundaries be the shape of closeness rather than a test he has to beat. Repair matters more than romance. The past is not asked, it is answered. He answers it by returning to the places he left loose and tying the knot. Conversations finished, patterns named, exits sealed. He answers it by showing up the same after the apology as he did during it. He answers it by choosing alignment when adrenaline spikes, and by choosing you without asking you to stop choosing yourself. Responsibility turns the volume down on history until it stops shouting in your nervous system. The universe also asks her a question. Can you remain open without rescuing? Can you keep your softness without dissolving your shape? Can you let him bring his work to your door without rushing to do it for him? The acceptance the field is preparing is not passive. It is receptive. Receptivity is not the absence of boundary. It is the presence of trust. Trust in your body, in your timing, in the way truth builds differently than fantasy. You are not required to be impressed. You are invited to be at peace. There will be signs that the requirement is being met. You stop rehearsing on the way to see him. You don't need a day to recover after you part. Silence becomes weather again, not strategy. The connection leaves you more available to your own life, not less. You notice that his steadiness does not depend on access to you. It precedes it. He is not trying to borrow your light to calm himself. He is bringing his own. If a wobble comes, and it might, the universe watches the next moment. Does he catch himself without you prompting? Does he name what happened without building a defense inside it? Does he repair without making your forgiveness the prize? Growth begins to look like shorter spirals, not perfect straight lines, and your body tells you the truth before your mind can craft a sentence. The breath drops, the room warms, the future stops feeling like a cliff and starts feeling like a porch. Nothing here requires spectacle. In fact, the more aligned it becomes, the less theatrical it is. Fireworks have their place, but hearth is what lasts. He learns to speak in a language your nervous system understands. Consistency, clarity, consideration, and you learn to answer from the same place. Presence, not performance. There is a sacred ordinariness to real union. It fits. So what does the universe require before she says yes? It requires that what wants to enter is something that can stay. It requires a man who interacts with her truth as architecture, not opposition. It requires a woman who will not abandon herself to keep what is knocking. It requires a field that has more gravity than storyline. If you're standing at this threshold now, ask the only questions that matter. Do I feel more myself when he's close? Does his presence make my shoulder drop? Is his truth intact when mine is too? If the answers live in your body as an easy yes, the requirement has been met. If they don't, keep your door open to love and let life keep teaching him how to arrive. When it is time, you won't be convinced. You'll be certain, and the certainty will be quiet. The universe will not only open the door, it will make the floor steady beneath both of your feet. And that is the moment the feminine says yes. Not to potential, but to presence. Not to noise, but to a life that can hold what you both came here to live. Union doesn't break the door down. It notices whether the house is honest, and then it steps inside. By now, you've seen what the final test really asks of him and what it asks of you. No more auditions, no more trying to win each other with adrenaline. The field has grown quieter and heavier on purpose because real love prefers rooms where truth can stay. If he is ready, you won't feel it as fireworks. You'll feel it as ground. Your shoulders will drop without permission. You'll stop rehearsing in the car. You'll hear yourself say exactly what you mean and watch him remain, not because he's braced, but because he's finally built for it. He isn't here to outrun the past or to borrow your calm. He is here to keep today clean, to meet tomorrow with the same chest, and to hold the repair until it becomes the new climate. That is how the door becomes a home. The feminine's yes is not a reward for effort. It is the natural response to coherence. When his presence no longer requires you to abandon yourself. When your body feels more available to life after he leaves than before he arrived. When silence returns to being weather instead of strategy. You're not in potential anymore. You're in the beginning of something that can live. You do not need to push this moment forward. Your work is to keep the room honest. Let your yes be as soft and exact as breath entering. Let your no be as steady and kind as the floor. Speak the small truths on ordinary days. Receive what is offered as it is, without painting it brighter or darker. If fear tries to bargain, return to the body and let the exhale lead. You are not performing safety, you are recognizing it. He will still wobble sometimes. Growth is a shorter spiral, not a straight line. What matters now is what happens next. Does he catch himself without making you the net? Does he name the old pattern before it names him? Does he stay in the room with both truths, his and yours, until the current finds its shape again? If the answer is yes more often than not, you will feel the future move from cliff to porch. The story stops shouting, the home appears. And can you remain open without dissolving? Can you keep your softness without letting it carry his homework? Can you trust the pace that kept you whole when you had every reason to rush? This is your mastery: receptivity with shape, warmth with edges, love that welcomes and does not wobble. Look around at how ordinary the miracle is. A plan adjusted with care, a conversation that ends closer than it began, a hand that touches in a way that leaves more of you present, not less. This is union's language, not spectacle, but continuity. Not a door that slams open, but a threshold crossed again and again with the same truth that invited it. If you are standing here now, give yourselves permission to meet without pretending it's not holy just because it's quiet. Let your eyes say what your spirits have been saying for months. Let your presence be the welcome you both prayed for. And if it isn't time, let your peace be the proof that you don't have to hold the door for a timeline that can't yet stay. Love wastes nothing. What is not ready becomes lesson, and what is ready becomes life. Union does not enter where we perform. It enters where we tell the truth and keep telling it. It stays where boundaries are architecture, not arguments. It grows where accountability replaces apology and tenderness replaces tactics. It breathes where both of you can be fully yourselves at the same time. He has come far, not to your pedestal, but to your level. You have come far, not to hardness, but to wholeness. The universe hasn't been trying to make this dramatic. It has been trying to make it durable. If you feel the quiet certainty rising, trust it. You're not being convinced, you're recognizing home. And that is the final message. When truth can stay, love moves in.